Don't forget to like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to stay updated with our latest stories. The request felt so ordinary, almost mundane, yet it sent a peculiar little flutter through my chest. It was a Tuesday, one of those relentlessly gray November afternoons where the sky seemed to hang just a few feet above the rooftops. I was at the Daily Grind, my favorite coffee shop, the kind with mismatched chairs and the constant, comforting hiss of the espresso machine. I'd been nursing a lukewarm latte for the better part of an hour, staring out at the damp street, lost in the kind of quiet contemplation that had become a regular companion since my kids had flown the nest and since Richard and I decided our paths were better walked separately. My name is Eleanor, by the way, Eleanor Vance. Most folks just call me Ellie. I was just about to pack up my laptop when my phone buzzed. It was a text from Sarah, my oldest friend, the kind of friend who knows where all your metaphorical bodies are buried because she helped you dig the holes. The message was short. Hey Elle, weird Hugh? Can you give Ben a ride to Oakan? His car's in the shop. He's at my place. Ben, Sarah's younger brother. I hadn't seen Ben in, heavens, it must have been at least 15 years. Maybe more. He was just a kid back then, a lanky teenager with a mop of unruly brown hair and a shy smile, always trailing after Sarah and me with a mix of awe and annoyance. Oakan was a good 45-minute drive, a quaint little town nestled in the foothills, known for its antique shops and quiet charm. My afternoon was free, a blank canvas really, so there was no good reason to say no. Sure, I texted back. Be there in 20. Pulling up to Sarah's familiar, slightly ramshackle Victorian house, I saw him standing on the porch, and for a moment my breath caught. This was not the lanky teenager I remembered. This Ben was a man. He was tall, much taller than I recalled, with broad shoulders that filled out his simple denim jacket. The unruly brown hair was still there, a little shorter perhaps, but still with that boyish tendency to fall across his forehead. And the smile, when he saw my car, was no longer shy, but warm, open, and framed by laugh lines around his eyes that spoke of a life lived. He had a duffel bag slung over one shoulder. He looked, in a word, good. Really good. There was a quiet strength about him, a self-assuredness that was incredibly appealing. I felt a blush creep up my neck, which was ridiculous. I was 52, for crying out loud, not some flustered schoolgirl. He opened the passenger door and slid in, bringing a gust of crisp autumn air and the faint, pleasant scent of sandalwood and something uniquely masculine. Eleanor? Wow, it's been ages. Thanks so much for this. You're a lifesaver. His voice was deeper than I remembered, a smooth baritone that rumbled pleasantly. Ben, it's great to see you. No problem at all, I said, trying to sound breezy, casual, as if my heart wasn't doing a strange little tap dance. So, Oakan, huh? What takes you out there? I pulled away from the curb, the old engine of my trusty sit-in humming a familiar tune. Work thing, mostly, he said, settling into the seat. I'm a carpenter, you know. Or maybe you didn't. Anyway, there's this old inn out there, the Willow Creek Inn. They're doing a big restoration, and I'm consulting on some of the custom woodwork. My car decided to throw a tantrum this morning naturally. He chuckled, a nice, easy sound. A carpenter? That's wonderful, Ben. I remember you were always good with your hands. Built that crazy treehouse in your parents' backyard, didn't you? He grinned, and I saw a flash of the boy he used to be. Yeah, the one that nearly collapsed on Sarah. She still gives me grief about that. We fell into an easy rhythm of conversation as the city streets gave way to winding country roads. The gray afternoon light filtered through the bare branches of trees lining the highway, painting the landscape in muted tones. We talked about Sarah, of course, catching up on her latest antics. We talked about his carpentry, the passion clear in his voice as he described the grain of different woods, the satisfaction of bringing old things back to life. He asked about me, too, not just polite questions, but genuinely interested ones. He asked about my empty nest, about my work as a freelance graphic designer, about what I did with my time now that it was more my own. There was an intimacy to the conversation that surprised me. Maybe it was the enclosed space of the car, or the shared history, however distant. Or maybe it was just Ben himself. He had a way of listening, really listening, his hazel eyes focused, a slight smile playing on his lips. I found myself opening up in a way I hadn't with anyone in a long time, talking about the quiet loneliness that sometimes crept in, the feeling of being at a crossroads, unsure of the next direction. He didn't offer platitudes or easy answers. He just listened, nodded, and occasionally shared a thought that was surprisingly insightful. The landscape grew more picturesque as we neared Oakan. Rolling hills, dotted with old farmhouses and the occasional vineyard, stretched out on either side of us. The air smelled cleaner, sharper. "It's beautiful out here," I murmured, more to myself than to him. "It is," he agreed, his gaze soft as he looked out the window. "There's a peacefulness to it, good for the soul." He then turned that gaze on me, and for a moment our eyes met and held. It wasn't a flirtatious look, not exactly. It was something deeper, a flicker of understanding, of connection that sent that same peculiar flutter through me again, stronger this time. I felt a warmth spread through my chest, a feeling I hadn't realized I'd been missing so acutely. It was the simple, profound comfort of being seen, truly seen, by another human being. The drive was almost over. Oakan was just around the bend, and a part of me, a surprisingly large part, didn't want it to end. As we drove down Oakan's charming main street, lined with its colorful storefronts and gas lamps already beginning to glow in the fading light, Ben pointed towards a grand, slightly weathered building at the far end. "That's it. The Willow Creek Inn." It looked like something out of a storybook, with a wide porch and ivy climbing its stone walls. I pulled up to the entrance. "Well, here we are," I said, trying to keep my voice light. But there was an undeniable undercurrent of something else, a wistfulness perhaps. Ben didn't move to get out immediately. He turned in his seat, facing me more fully. "Eleanor," he began, his voice a little softer now, "I really can't thank you enough. Not just for the ride, but for the conversation. It's been really nice." "It has been nice, Ben," I admitted, meeting his gaze. The air in the car suddenly felt charged, thick with unspoken things. The subtle scent of sandalwood seemed to fill my senses. He was so close. I could see the flecks of gold in his hazel eyes, the way a few strands of hair fell stubbornly across his brow. There was a pause, a breath held, and in that small eternity, I felt a pull, an undeniable magnetism that both thrilled and terrified me. What was happening here? This was Sarah's little brother. But he wasn't so little anymore. And I wasn't the same woman I was 15 years ago either. The silence stretched, filled with a delicate tension, the kind that hums just beneath the surface, promising something, or perhaps warning against it. I wondered if he felt it too. He finally broke the spell, though his eyes still held mine. "Listen, I'm probably going to be here for a few hours. Maybe grab a bite to eat before I figure out the bus schedule back. Unless—" He hesitated, a flicker of something. Uncertainty. Hope. In his eyes. "Unless you're not in a rush to get back to the city?" Oakan has a couple of decent spots for dinner." My heart did a little leap. The sensible part of my brain, the one that usually ran the show, screamed, "He's Sarah's brother. You're old enough to be his." Well, older sister, practically. But another part, a quieter, more adventurous voice that had been dormant for years, whispered, "Why not? What do you have to lose?" It was that voice, the one craving connection, the one that had felt so wonderfully alive during our drive, that answered. "Actually, Ben," I heard myself say, a smile playing on my lips, "I'm not in any particular rush. I'd love to have dinner." His face lit up with that warm, genuine smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "Great," he said, and there was a lightness in his voice, a boyish enthusiasm that was utterly charming. "There's this little Italian place just off Main Street. Nana's. Best lasagna you'll ever taste. I promise." Nana's it is. I agreed, a sense of pleasant anticipation bubbling up inside me. As he got out of the car to retrieve his duffel bag from the back seat, I took a deep breath, trying to steady the unexpected thrumming in my veins. This was unexpected. Definitely unexpected. But as I watched him walk around the car, his movements easy and confident, I couldn't deny the spark of excitement, the feeling that this gray November day might just hold a surprising warmth after all. He opened my door for me, a gesture so old-fashioned it was almost startling, yet it felt perfectly natural coming from him. "Shall we?" he asked, offering his arm. I hesitated for just a fraction of a second before resting my hand lightly on his forearm. His touch was warm, firm, and sent a shiver tracing its way up my arm. It wasn't a romantic gesture, not overtly, but it felt significant, like crossing a small, unseen threshold. Nana's was everything a small-town Italian restaurant should be. Cozy, dimly lit, with red and white checkered tablecloths, and the tantalizing aroma of garlic and oregano hanging in the air. A friendly, stout woman with flour dusting her apron, presumably Nana herself, greeted us like regulars and showed us to a quiet booth in the corner. The atmosphere was intimate, worlds away from the sterile, trendy restaurants I sometimes frequented back in the city. Here, conversations were hushed, laughter was genuine, and the clinking of wine glasses provided a gentle soundtrack. "This is lovely, Ben," I said, sliding into the booth. The worn leather of the seat felt comforting. "Glad you like it," he replied, his eyes twinkling in the candlelight. "It's one of my favorite spots when I'm working out this way. Good, honest food. No pretense." We ordered a bottle of Chianti, and as he poured, our fingers brushed. A tiny spark, but I felt it, and I saw a quick glance from him that suggested he'd felt it too. We talked even more freely than we had in the car. He told me about some of the intricate restoration work he was doing at the inn, the challenges of matching 100-year-old craftsmanship, the joy of seeing a piece of history come back to life under his hands. His passion was infectious, and I found myself fascinated, asking questions, picturing the details he described so vividly. He, in turn, drew me out about my own creative pursuits. I confessed my half-formed dreams of maybe, someday, illustrating a children's book, an idea I'd barely voiced to anyone, not even Sarah. He didn't laugh or dismiss it. Instead, he leaned forward, his expression serious. "You should do it, Eleanor. Life's too short to keep your dreams on a shelf. What kind of stories would you illustrate?" And just like that, I was talking about whimsical creatures and enchanted forests, ideas that had been gathering dust in the back of my mind. He listened with an intensity that made me feel like my little dream was the most important thing in the world. There was no judgment in his gaze, only encouragement. It was a rare and precious gift, that kind of focused attention. The lasagna arrived, and it was, as promised, divine, rich, cheesy, and deeply satisfying. We ate slowly, savoring the food and the conversation. The wine warmed me, loosening the last of my inhibitions. I found myself laughing more than I had in months, a genuine, from-the-belly kind of laugh. Ben had a dry wit, a subtle sense of humor that caught me off guard and delighted me. He told a story about a disastrous early carpentry project involving a lopsided bookshelf that had his first client, his own mother, threatening to disown him. I, in turn, shared a few embarrassing anecdotes from my early days as a graphic designer, including a logo I'd accidentally designed upside down. There was an ease between us, a comfortable rhythm that felt as if we'd known each other for years, not just as a friend's little brother, but as equals, peers. There was no awkwardness, no sense of an age gap, just two people connecting on a surprisingly deep level. The candlelight softened the lines on my face, and I hoped made the genuine happiness I felt shine through. He looked at me in a way that made me feel attractive, interesting. Not just Sarah's friend Eleanor, but Eleanor, the woman. As we finished our meal, a comfortable silence settled between us for a moment. The restaurant was quieter now, most of the dinner rush having subsided. Ben swirled the last of the Chianti in his glass, his expression thoughtful. "You know," he said, his voice low and intimate, "I almost didn't ask Sarah to text you today. I figured you'd be busy or, I don't know, just didn't want to impose." "I'm glad you did," I said softly, and I meant it with every fiber of my being. This unexpected evening was turning into something quite special. "Me too," he said, his eyes meeting mine across the table. And there it was again, that look. A look that wasn't just friendly. It was searching, appreciative. It held a warmth that went beyond simple camaraderie. It lingered a moment too long to be casual, sending a fresh wave of heat through me. My breath hitched. I felt like I was on the verge of something, standing on a precipice, the ground both thrillingly uncertain and incredibly inviting beneath my feet. The air crackled with a silent energy, a palpable connection that had been building steadily since he'd first slid into my passenger seat. The rest of the world seemed to fade away, leaving just the two of us in the warm glow of Nana's, on the cusp of something. I wasn't sure what, but my heart was pounding with a mixture of trepidation and a wild, unfamiliar hope. He reached across the table then, his hand covering mine where it rested near my wine glass. His touch was gentle but firm, his fingers calloused from his work, a stark contrast to the softness of my own. It wasn't a possessive gesture or a presumptuous one. It felt reassuring, grounding, and yet it sent a jolt of electricity straight up my arm and into my heart, which now seemed to be beating in my throat. "Eleanor," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, his thumb stroking the back of my hand almost imperceptibly. "This has been more than just a dinner. For me, anyway." My throat felt tight. I could only nod, my eyes locked on his. The intensity in his gaze was captivating, drawing me in. I saw vulnerability there, and a sincerity that disarmed me completely. All the societal norms, the shoulds and shouldn'ts that usually governed my thoughts, seemed to melt away like mist in the morning sun. What remained was a pure, unadulterated human connection, a spark between two souls that had, against all odds, found each other in the most unexpected of ways. I haven't felt this comfortable, this connected with someone in a very long time, he continued, his honesty like a balm. Maybe ever. "Me neither, Ben," I managed to say, my voice a little shaky. And it was true. The ease I felt with him, the way I could just be myself, unvarnished and real, was something I hadn't experienced in years, perhaps not even with Richard in the later stages of our marriage. This felt different, fresher, more authentic. He smiled then, a slow, gentle smile that reached his eyes and made them shine. "So," he said, his thumb continuing its hypnotic little dance on my hand, "what happens now?" It was a simple question, but it hung in the air, heavy with possibility. What did happen now? I had no map for this territory, no pre-written script. Part of me wanted to pull my hand away, to retreat to the safety of the familiar, to thank him for a lovely evening and drive back to my quiet, orderly life. But a much larger, more insistent part of me, the part that had felt a flicker of true aliveness today, wanted to lean in, to explore this uncharted path. "I don't know," I confessed, a small, nervous laugh escaping me. I guess we figure it out." His smile widened. I liked the sound of that. He gave my hand a gentle squeeze before releasing it, though the warmth of his touch lingered. "The inn has a rather lovely old library, I'm told. Lots of comfortable armchairs, and I still have a couple of hours before I absolutely need to think about that bus. Would you like to see it? Maybe have a coffee there?" The invitation was casual, yet it felt like another step, another threshold. The inn is current, temporary domain. It felt more intimate than Nana's. A decision point. My mind raced. Sarah would have a fit. Or would she? She always said I needed to get out more, to live a little. And what was I really considering? A coffee. A conversation in a library. It was innocent. Mostly. Yet the undercurrent was undeniably there, a subtle thrum of attraction that made everything feel charged and significant. "A library, you say?" I teased gently, trying to lighten the intensity I felt swirling inside me. "With comfortable armchairs? You know the way to a woman's heart, Ben." He chuckled, the sound rich and warm. "I aim to please Eleanor." The bill arrived, and before I could even reach for my purse, Ben had taken care of it. "My treat," he said firmly, but with a smile that brooked no argument. "You saved me from the Oakan bus system today. It's the least I can do." Outside Nana's, the November night had fully descended. The air was cold and crisp, carrying the faint scent of wood smoke from a distant chimney. The stars, unblemished by city lights, blazed with a fierce intensity in the inky sky. It felt like we were the only two people in the world. "The inn is just a short walk this way," Ben said, gesturing down the quiet street. He didn't offer his arm this time, but walked beside me, our shoulders occasionally brushing. Each accidental contact sent a little zing through me. We walked in comfortable silence for a few moments, the only sound the crunch of fallen leaves under our feet. The streetlights cast long, dancing shadows ahead of us. "Thank you for dinner, Ben," I said, breaking the quiet. "It really was wonderful." "The pleasure was all mine, Eleanor," he replied, his voice sincere. He glanced at me, his profile sharp and handsome in the dim light. "I meant what I said in there. This has been a really good day." "For me too," I admitted, and it was true. A day that had started with gray skies and a sense of enmity was ending with a feeling of possibility, a quiet thrill. The Willow Creek Inn loomed before us, its windows glowing with a welcoming warmth. It looked even more charming up close, a relic of a bygone era, lovingly preserved. As we stepped onto the wide, creaking porch, I felt a sense of stepping back in time. The lobby was just as Ben had hinted, all dark wood. Antique furniture and a grand stone fireplace where a cheerful fire crackled and popped casting dancing shadows on the walls. The air smelled of old books, lemon polish, and burning logs. It was incredibly inviting. "This way," Ben said, leading me past the check-in desk, where a kindly-looking older woman gave us a polite nod. We walked down a hushed corridor, our footsteps echoing softly on the polished wooden floor. He stopped before a pair of tall, dark oak doors. "The library," he announced with a slight flourish. He pushed one of the doors open, and I gasped. It was a book lover's dream. Floor-to-ceiling shelves crammed with leather-bound volumes lined every wall. Deep, comfortable-looking velvet armchairs were arranged in cozy nooks, each with its own small reading lamp. A large bay window at the far end looked out onto a moonlit garden. The room was empty, quiet, and filled with the serene, almost sacred atmosphere that only rooms full of books can possess. "Whole Ben," I breathed. "It's magnificent." He smiled, clearly pleased by my reaction. "I thought you might like it. Pick a chair. I'll see if I can rustle up that coffee. Or maybe something stronger, if you prefer. I think they have a decent brandy selection." "Coffee would be perfect," I said, my gaze sweeping around the room, already feeling a sense of peace settle over me. This room felt like a sanctuary. He nodded, back in a jiffy. As he slipped out, I wandered deeper into the library, running my fingers along the spines of ancient books. The scent of old paper and leather was intoxicating. I chose an armchair near the bay window, a plush, dark green velvet one that seemed to sigh with comfort as I sank into it. From here, I could see the silhouettes of trees swaying gently in the night breeze, their branches stark against the moonlit sky. It was incredibly peaceful. I thought about the turn this day had taken. A simple request for a ride had led to this unexpected connection with a man I barely knew, yet felt strangely familiar with. A man who was younger than me, yes, but who possessed a maturity and a quiet depth that belied any concerns about age. He made me feel seen. He made me feel interesting. He made me feel alive in a way I hadn't for a very, very long time. There was a subtle tension, yes, an awareness of him as a man and me as a woman, but it wasn't predatory or uncomfortable. It was exciting. A gentle hum of attraction that added a delicious little spark to our interactions. I hadn't felt that spark for anyone in so long, I'd almost forgotten what it felt like. With Richard, our connection had faded into a comfortable, predictable routine long before the end. This felt new, unpredictable, and a little bit dangerous in the most enticing way. What was I doing? I was a sensible, middle-aged woman, a mother, recently divorced. This wasn't in any of my carefully constructed life plans. But then, life had a funny way of throwing curveballs, didn't it? And sometimes those curveballs turned out to be unexpected gifts. Ben returned a few minutes later, carrying a tray with 2 steaming mugs of coffee and a small plate of biscotti. "Success," he announced quietly, a smile playing on his lips. He set the tray down on a low wooden table between us. "You're a man of many talents, Ben," I said, taking a mug. The coffee smelled rich and dark. "Just resourceful," he replied, settling into the armchair opposite mine. He leaned back, looking completely at ease, as if this, sitting in a quiet library, sharing coffee with me, was the most natural thing in the world. We sipped our coffee in comfortable silence for a few moments, the only sounds the crackling of the fire from the distant lobby and the occasional sigh of the wind outside. The atmosphere was intimate, cocoon-like. I felt a sense underscore of profound contentment wash over me. "So," I began, breaking the quiet, "tell me more about this inn. What's the most interesting thing you've discovered while working here?" His eyes lit up, and he launched into a story about a hidden compartment he'd found in an old writing desk, containing a bundle of letters from the early 1900s, written by a woman to her lover who was off at war. He described the faded ink, the delicate handwriting, the poignant words of love and longing. As he spoke, I was captivated, not just by the story itself, but by the way he told it, his voice full of reverence for the history he'd unearthed. He had a storyteller's gift, painting vivid pictures with his words. "It was like holding a piece of someone's soul in my hands," he said, his voice soft. "A reminder that people 100 years ago loved and worried and hoped just like we do." "That's incredible, Ben," I murmured, deeply touched by his sensitivity. It was a side of him I hadn't expected, this gentle, almost poetic appreciation for the past. He wasn't just a carpenter, he was a historian of wood, a guardian of stories. The conversation flowed effortlessly from there. We talked about books we loved, movies that had moved us, places we dreamed of visiting. We discovered a shared love for old black and white films and a surprising agreement on the best kind of pizza toppings, mushroom and olive, for the record. With every shared laugh, every exchanged glance, the connection between us deepened, solidified. The hours seemed to melt away. I glanced at the grandfather clock in the corner of the library. It was nearly 11. "Goodness, look at the time," I said, a little startled. "I should probably think about heading back. It's a bit of a drive." A wave of disappointment washed over me at the thought of the evening ending. Ben looked at his own watch, a frown creasing his brow. "You're right. I've kept you much later than I intended. The last bus." He trailed off, a thoughtful expression on his face. Then he looked at me, a hesitant, almost shy look in his eyes that reminded me so much of the boy he used to be, yet it was overlaid with the quiet confidence of the man he had become. "Eleanor," he began, his voice low and earnest, "this might be forward. And please feel free to say no, absolutely no pressure. But the inn, well, it has guest rooms, and I know it's late and it's a long drive back for you alone in the dark." He paused, taking a breath. "What if you stayed? Here, at the inn, as my guest, of course. We could have breakfast in the morning. I could even show you some of the restoration work I'm doing before you head off, if you're interested." My heart skipped a beat, then another. Stay. The suggestion hung in the air, electrifying, terrifying, and incredibly tempting. My sensible brain was having a 5-alarm fire, sirens blaring, red lights flashing. Stay the night? With Sarah's younger brother? What would people think? What would Sarah think? But then there was that other voice, the one that had been growing stronger all evening, the one that whispered of adventure, of connection, of taking a chance on something real and beautiful, however unexpected. He must have seen the conflict on my face, because he quickly added, "Separate rooms, of course, Eleanor. I don't want this conversation to end. Not yet. And I worry about you driving so late." His concern felt genuine, adding another layer to the complex emotions swirling within me. I looked at him, really looked at him. At the sincerity in his hazel eyes, the slight furrow of concern on his brow, the way his hand rested on the arm of his chair, strong and capable. He wasn't being predatory. He was being kind, considerate, and perhaps a little hopeful. This wasn't about a casual fling, I sensed. This was about something more. Something about connection, about not wanting a truly special moment to just dissipate into the night. The idea was audacious. It was impulsive. It was completely out of character for Eleanor Vance, the sensible, predictable woman I had become. But maybe, just maybe, that wasn't who I wanted to be anymore. Maybe I wanted to be the woman who said yes to unexpected adventures, who embraced moments of genuine connection, who wasn't afraid to step off the well-trodden path. I took a deep breath. The scent of old books and coffee, and the faint, lingering aroma of sandalwood from Ben himself filled my senses. The library felt like a cocoon, safe and warm, a world away from judgment and expectation. "Ben," I said, my voice surprisingly steady, though my pulse was racing. "That's a very kind offer." I paused, a small smile playing on my lips. "And I think I'd like that very much." A slow smile spread across Ben's face, a smile so radiant it seemed to light up the entire room. It was a smile of relief, of happiness, and something else too. A shared understanding, silent acknowledgement that we were stepping into something new and exciting together. "Good," he said softly, his eyes holding mine. "Really good." He stood up then and offered me his hand, not to help me up, but simply as a connection. I placed my hand in his. His grip was warm, reassuring. For a moment, we just stood there, hand in hand, in the quiet grandeur of the old library, the unspoken possibilities of the night ahead hanging in the air like a shimmering veil. There was no awkwardness, no pressure, just a profound sense of rightness, of two people finding a surprising and wonderful solace in each other's company. "I'll go speak to Martha at the front desk," he said, his thumb gently brushing my knuckles. "Find you the best available room, probably one with a view of the garden. You'd like that." "I would," I agreed, my voice a little breathless. As he walked towards the library doors, I watched him go, a whirlwind of emotions swirling inside me. Trepidation, excitement, a touch of disbelief at my own boldness, but overriding it all, a deep, resonant sense of joy. It felt like I was standing on the brink of a new chapter, not just in this unexpected evening, but in my life. A chapter I hadn't seen coming, but one I was suddenly, inexplicably, ready to embrace. The man who was once just Sarah's younger brother had, in the course of a single afternoon and evening, become someone much, much more. And as I waited for him in the quiet embrace of the firelit library, I couldn't help but wonder, with a thrill that was both terrifying and exhilarating, what the morning would bring.